She was one of Hollywood's brightest young stars, the kind of actress who didn't just appear in movies, she elevated them. Directors loved her, critics respected her, and audiences felt like they knew her. There was something timeless about the way she carried herself on screen, a kind of grace that didn't need to be loud to command attention. Her name was Marsha Hunt, and if things had gone differently, she'd be mentioned in the same breath as Bette Davis, Joan Crawford, and Barbara Stanwyck. But instead of becoming a household name, she became something else entirely, a cautionary tale about what happens when you speak your mind in the wrong era, in the wrong city, with the wrong people watching. Because Marsha didn't get blacklisted for anything she did wrong. She got blacklisted for daring to believe that freedom of speech applied to her too. She was born Marsha Virginia Hunt in Chicago in 1917, raised in New York, and made her way to Hollywood by the time she was 18. She was still a teenager when Paramount signed her in 1935, a time when the studio system owned you from head to toe. But she was talented, and she worked hard. Between the late 1930s and the mid-1940s, Marsha starred in over 50 films. She wasn't the flashiest actress, but she was steady, skilled, and dependable, playing alongside some of the biggest stars of the era. She appeared in Pride and Prejudice in 1940, sharing scenes with Laurence Olivier, and in The Human Comedy in 1943 with Mickey Rooney, one of MGM's crown jewels at the time. She was never scandalous, never difficult, and never involved in the tabloid drama that so many other stars of the era fell into. In short, she played the game exactly the way she was supposed to. And yet, it still wasn't enough. In 1947, the mood in Hollywood shifted. The House Un-American Activities Committee, or HUAC, was in full swing, using the fear of communism to interrogate writers, actors, and directors about their political beliefs. Marsha, who had no history of Communist Party involvement and had never identified as radical, was disturbed by what she was seeing. She didn't believe in silencing people just because they had different ideas, and she certainly didn't believe the government had a right to drag artists into court over their beliefs. So she joined a group called the Committee for the First Amendment. It wasn't a communist group. It was a group of Hollywood professionals who believed in free speech and civil liberties. With stars like Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, she flew to Washington, D.C. to protest the hearings. They weren't there to defend communism. They were there to defend the Constitution. But the protest backfired hard. When the group returned to Hollywood, studios began quietly distancing themselves from anyone involved. Some actors, like Bogart, publicly backpedaled to save their careers. But Marsha didn't. She stood by her beliefs. She didn't lie or walk back her actions. And in 1950, her name appeared in Red Channels, a pamphlet that listed supposed communist sympathizers in the entertainment industry. The problem was, being in Red Channels didn't require proof. You didn't have to be a card-carrying member. You just had to have signed a petition, gone to a meeting, or made a statement someone didn't like. And once your name was in that booklet, good luck getting it out. Overnight, Marsha went from a respected working actress to someone no one would hire. No major studio wanted to be associated with her. No producer wanted to take the risk. And just like that, the doors slammed shut. What makes Marsha's story even more painful is that she hadn't done anything wrong. She wasn't secretly funneling money to the Soviet Union. She didn't sabotage film sets or write propaganda. She simply spoke out against censorship, and that was enough to be blacklisted. That's how fragile the industry was in the 1950s. It didn't take a crime or even a rumor of one, just a little discomfort, just one too many questions. And when Marsha tried to keep working, she found herself locked out of film roles. She still had her talent, she still had her looks, but none of that mattered. In a system run on fear, her principles became her prison. In the years that followed, Marsha pivoted. She didn't quit acting entirely, but the big screen roles dried up. She turned to television and theater, spaces that were more forgiving, though never quite as glamorous. She also began to focus more on activism. If they were going to take her career, she decided, they wouldn't take her voice. She got involved in the United Nations, traveled to famine-stricken countries, and spoke publicly about world hunger, homelessness, and social injustice. She worked with the United Nations Association and helped draft educational programs. She became the kind of humanitarian that Hollywood pretended to admire but quietly punished when it got too real. And the most incredible part? She did it all without resentment. She didn't become bitter. She just kept moving forward. As the years passed, Hollywood slowly tried to make things right. Decades after the blacklist had ended, people began to acknowledge how wrong it was, how many lives it had destroyed, how much hypocrisy it revealed. And Marsha, now in her 80s and 90s, was invited back to speak on panels, appear in documentaries, and share her story. She even published a book, The Way We Wore, about fashion in the golden age of Hollywood, a love letter to an era that had once tried to erase her. In interviews, she was gracious. She never named names. She didn't trash the industry, but she never apologized either. She said what happened to her was unjust, plain and simple, and that she would have done it all over again if given the choice. Marsha Hunt died in 2022 at the age of 104. Her life spanned the birth of the studio system, the terror of the blacklist, the civil rights era, and the modern-day reckoning with Hollywood's past. She lived through it all with grace and clarity, never compromising her beliefs. She didn't die rich. She didn't die surrounded by Oscars, but she died respected by the people who mattered, those who understood that real courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and relentless. It's doing what's right even when no one is watching, and especially when everyone is. Her story is a reminder that freedom of speech doesn't always come with freedom from consequences. That speaking truth to power in a city built on illusion can get you pushed out faster than a bad box office. But Marsha Hunt never needed a scandal to be memorable. She didn't burn out. She was burned away by a system that saw her decency as dangerous. And maybe that's why we remember her now, because she stood tall while others ducked, because she didn't run, because even when they tried to erase her, she refused to disappear.